to GTN Coach's Corner, where we answer all your questions. So if you have questions related to triathlon training, leave them down below in the comments section. As you can see, we're proving today that you can coach from anywhere.
Yeah, even when you're on holiday.
Yeah, well, when you're working in Lanzarote.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's what we're doing. We found a fine bit of volcanic rock to sit on there.
Yeah, very comfortable.
Yeah. Right, well, into the first question from Andy Moran. Hi all, I've qualified for the Ironman 70.3 in St George and understand that it's at altitude. I live in the UK and wondered if you have any tricks or tips to try and train for this, as I'll be arriving in St George a few days before the race. Thanks in advance. Well, this is obviously quite topical, as we're obviously prepping for the Ironman World Championships, which are taking place in St George in May. Now, this is a really interesting question because St George is at 823 metres of elevation, which is technically at altitude, but it kind of isn't at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's very much on that threshold where you can start seeing measurable effects of the altitude. So essentially, some people are going to feel that effect, but some people won't feel anything at all because it's too low. Essentially, studies have shown that from 600 to 800 meters is round about the point where you can start seeing a measurable difference in performance. There's a study that shows that for every 1,000 feet of elevation above 1,000 feet, you'll see a decrease of around 2% in endurance performance, or a drop-off of 4.4% in the time to exhaustion if you're running on a treadmill at just a constant speed for as long as you can. And that's quite a marked effect. I mean, that's quite significant. But like we say, St George is right on the threshold of that. I guess the question then is, what can you do if you are worried about it? There isn't that much you can do as far as actually preparing for the altitude when you're at home in the UK. You can't really go into, well, unless you have an altitude tent, you can't really go into an altitude chamber and train in there or anything like that. It's really not going to be effective. What you can do is prepare your body for that adjustment so that it happens as quickly as possible when you do get there. That means taking some iron, taking some antioxidants, that kind of thing before you travel, so that your body is prepared to deal with the elevation as soon as you get there and you can adjust as quickly as possible. But the reality is, it's going to take your body 7 to 10 days to adjust to any altitude change. So ideally, you get there more than 10 days before, and you'll probably see that that's what most of the pros do for the Ironman World Champs, and spend 10 days there adjusting so that you've completely over any changes that your body needs to adjust to. But for most people, that's not practical, is it? You can't spend 10 days before the race and then maybe have a holiday afterwards. It ends up being pretty much all your leave for one trip. So that's not practical. You also want to avoid the worst window, which is 4 to 7 days. That's when your body's going to feel the worst when you go to a new altitude, because your body is slowly adjusting and it suddenly does all these things where it needs to adjust. You're going to feel your worst 4 to 7 days. So ideally, if you can't get there 10 days before, you kind of want to be there 18 to 48 hours before the race. Last minute, fly into the altitude and do your race before your body even knows that it's at altitude and tries to make all these adaptations. That's basically all the advice we can give you, I'm afraid. There's not much more you can do about it other than don't think about it too much. You can suck yourself out. It's not that high at St George. And if you're thinking about it the whole time and thinking, oh, I feel lousy because I'm at altitude, you could really just suck yourself out when it's not actually having that big an effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's much more to say on that one. Well, moving on from C Saba 675 said, hey team, can you please help me on fueling? Once in a month, I skip the train and I use my bike for a 60-kilometre commute. On a good day, I can make that journey in 2 hours and I use about 2,000 calories. How should I fuel during the 8 hours office day to ride home in the evening? Most of my attempts end up in a massive bonk. Goes on to talk about their weekend training and whatnot. 2 hours each way, that's impressive. That's a big day.
Day's commute, yeah.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, I can relate to this, and I know James can as well. Exercising at the end of the day after a full day of work is hard, and it's not simply just down to nutrition. Sometimes it's just those general stresses, the mental fatigue from work that really can affect you at the end of the day. And I have been there. I've been crawling up hills on the way home from work, having actually fueled pretty well. But of course, you can help yourself by making sure that you're fueling well during the day. So after that long ride in the morning, making sure, during the ride, actually making sure you fuel on the way in, because 2 hours is a long way. And then as soon as you arrive, making sure that you're fueling again. And then just periodic refueling through the day. I think the one that a lot of people fall into the trap of doing is that mid-afternoon, sort of forgetting, getting caught up in work, trying to cram stuff in before the end of the day, and forgetting to fuel. just before they're about to head out, well, clearly for you, 60k home.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark that you need to kind of fuel for your last ride so that you don't bonk, and that starts during your first ride. You need to be fueling as you're going in. So as soon as you get there and sit down at your desk, your body is already recovering from that session to get you ready for that second session in the day. I guess this is what pros do all the time. They're fueling for their next session while they're doing their current session because their sessions come so quickly, and that's exactly what you're experiencing. So yeah, like Mark says, fuel throughout the day. Make sure you have something substantial, maybe 90 minutes before you get on that bike to head home so that you're well fueled. And then just have something in your pocket, just in case of emergency on your way home. It's easy to stop halfway and eat a Mars bar or an energy gel just to get you home and enjoy the last bit of your ride rather than getting home completely smashed from a long day of work and a very long commute. But credit to you for doing that. That's great. Yeah,
really good going. Next question. This is quite an interesting one, actually, from Ryan Lopez. Does walking help at all with run fitness, and does really low-intensity bike workouts help with my bike fitness? I ask because I have a standing desk with a walking treadmill and I walk about 60 miles a week. I'm wondering if I'm helping my running or hurting it. I also have a Wahoo kicker bike, a Wahoo rolling desk. I basically set up Zwift for a 7-hour ride around 115 watts a couple of days a week. Then during my lunch breaks, I'll run, swim, bike or lift weights as normal. I type on a computer all day for work and figured, why not exercise while working? Well, firstly, wow, what a setup.
Yeah, you're making us look really lazy. I mean, particularly today when you're sitting on the beach, but even on a normal day, when we're sitting at our desk, we should have a kicker underneath the desk. We're pedaling away while we're presenting. It's very impressive. Now, basically, as far as your question goes, is this having any effect? Is this helping you? Yes and no. So any exercise you do, anything that stresses your body is going to lead to an adaptation. You're going to get fitter. It's going to lead to an adaptation because you stressed the body. But when you're doing something at such a low intensity, what's going to happen is you're going to stress your body maybe very slightly, maybe for the first week or two, and then your body's going to have adapted and you will no longer actually be stressing it. You will just have a slightly higher baseline fitness level. So then all this time you're spending at that super low intensity, yeah, maybe you're flushing some of the waste products out, maybe you're improving your cardiovascular fitness ever so slightly, but you're not making a huge difference to your fitness for a long time of commitment sitting on that desk. It's definitely better than sitting still. You're not going to get as stiff and as tight or anything like that. But there's a bit of a warning that comes with this. If you are doing other training, which it sounds like you are, such as intervals or high intensity sessions, you may find that what you're doing with this long, low intensity stuff all day is initially flushing out those waste products and everything and then just making you a little bit flat, which means you might then end up doing those high intensity sessions, those hard sessions, slightly slower, slightly less intense than you would have. And as we said with the adaptation, the more you stress your body, the more adaptation you're going to get. So if you're not doing them as hard or as fast because you're a little bit fatigued from spinning all day, you may not get the same adaptation. Basically, you may be spending more time in that gray zone in between real hard work and real easy work because you're slightly tired from constantly pedaling and walking and everything.
I guess a good kind of a quick comparison is if you spent a whole day walking around with your family, around the shops, doing something during the day, and then you went to do a run session in the evening, we've all felt that feeling where that lack of springiness. And that's kind of just like a short-term example of what is happening over a long period of time.
Yeah, it does feel like you would get super fit if you were just exercising all day, but you're doing it at such a low intensity that all it's really doing is draining that springiness for those really hard sessions where you want to see some advantage. An example would be the pros. A pro's general rule of thumb, and pros could train for 7-8 hours a day if they wanted to. That's all they do. And generally their rule is they train hard and then don't sit when you can lie down, or don't stand when you can sit, and don't sit when you can lie down. Rest is the most important thing for adaptation and recovery.
I will throw in one caveat just to completely scupper all of this, is if you are doing some really long ultra style stuff, maybe even some of the extreme triathlon stuff, where to be honest, you're probably going to do more walking than you are running, then actually it could be really good. And that was one of the bits of advice I was given ahead of Norseman, and it was really good. It was just actually going, spending time in the hills, walking, just going for long walks off of runs and stuff like that, because actually it's just hours
and lots of hours.
Yeah, getting your legs used to fatigue.
I guess he's getting enough hours.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Our final question, second to last question, from Nezrin Senbil. He says, I'm a runner. I've done a couple of marathons and ultras. Now I would like to start training for tri. Hey, welcome to the team. Yeah. My question is about swimming. I swim slow and cannot swim very long with good shape. I swim 25 meters, rest, and swim again. I just started this week. So, do you think by training more often I would improve, or should I just get a swimming coach and learn to swim from them? Thank you guys, great channel. Well, welcome to the world of triathlon. It's great to have you. Swimming is a very technical sport. It's also, like running, very aerobic. So essentially, there are two ways you can improve your swimming. You can either get fitter, more aerobically fit so that you can swim for longer, or you can get more efficient, so work on your technique and improve that. Now, as a previous runner or a marathon runner, we're going to assume you've got pretty good aerobic fitness already. And as a non-swimmer, we're going to assume you've got a pretty poor technique. So taking those two things into account, you're going to see much more gains by improving your technique than you are from just swimming and swimming and swimming and building that aerobic engine. You do need to do a fair amount of swimming, but you'll find that you do that while you're doing technical work and working on your stroke. You will get, your shoulders will get fit that you never trained while you were running, that kind of thing. But you already got the aerobic base. You're going to see much more gains getting a swim coach and learning your technique properly rather than just spending hours and hours trying to get fit.
Yeah, and also I would actually suggest not getting caught up into the trap of trying to just do more and more and more, because actually if you can go to sessions with a focus, okay, this is a technique session, I'm really going to focus on this part of my stroke. This session I'm going to focus on improving my endurance. You're going to get far more out of each of those sessions rather than just trying to do more and more swimming, hoping that's going to help.
It's something I can relate to, because as a runner, basically the rule is always the more you run, the faster, the better you're going to get. And when you've come to that your whole life and then you go to swimming, that's not the rule. It's far more a technical sport, and you need to make sure that you're always learning your technique and refining that good technique, not getting to the point where your technique falls apart and ingraining a bad technique. So yeah, small bits, often, work on your technique.
Yeah, and we have loads of videos on our channel. If you haven't or can't find a swim coach, we've got loads of technical advice there, so do go check that out. Final question from Andre G. What are your thoughts on CrossFit while on a 16-week program for half Ironman? I don't want to give up CrossFit because I like the weightlifting and HIIT workouts, but I don't know the effect it will have on my Ironman training. I do it about 3 to 4 times a week and 6 days of Ironman training.
Lots of training. How's your CrossFit going, Mark? Are you seeing them gains?
Oh yeah, I don't know if you could tell this week.
I'm going to say no. Well, these two sports are very different, CrossFit and Ironman, but you can see the appeal, because both of them claim to have the fittest athletes on earth, don't they? We're not going to weigh in on the debate on who actually claims that title. But the fact is they're very different sports. CrossFit is very, like you say, high intensity strength work, and Ironman is very much like long endurance aerobic stuff. There's not going to be a lot of crossover. So one's not really going to help the other one. Yes, maybe a little bit of endurance will help with your more endurance-related CrossFit challenges, and also the core strength that you get from CrossFit may help with your endurance in your triathlon, but that's about it. After that, they're essentially just two very different sports. And now we're not saying you can't do both sports, absolutely. If you've got the time, then go for it. But what you need to be careful of is that one is not really affecting the other one. You have to schedule really carefully. You can't really expect to go and do a really solid swim session when you did arms that morning in CrossFit. Is all CrossFit arms? I don't know.
Well, I mean, to be honest, that is probably the main thing, and we'd say that even just with S&C work or gym work that you're generally doing, not necessarily focus on CrossFit. It's just, it's getting that balance, and to be honest, it is a bit of a dark art really trying to get that one completely right. I mean, some days you try and get it right, other days, yes, you will end up turning up to a swim session fatigued, and you've kind of got to embrace that and get through it. But yeah, that is kind of the key thing. If you're doing 3 to 4 CrossFit workouts per week, then yeah, trying to make sure that you avoid continually doing arms on that morning or the day before, and then trying to do a quality swim workout the next day or on the run with the legs, etc. That is probably the main bit of advice.
Juggling Ironman training is difficult enough before you throw in the other ball that is CrossFit training. But good luck with it. Let us know if you do manage to do that. That's all our questions for today. We hope we've answered some of your questions, or you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section down below. We'll get to them next week, I suppose.
Yeah, use that hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. If you enjoyed today's video, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe.